All right, and we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Of Heroes and Men. Today, I got a really special guest. This guy is he's a warrior poet of sorts for sure. Not only was he a great fighter, but he's also very very good writer, and I think someone that has a lot of wisdom to share. So, Ed, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I was excited to look over your stuff. Your point of view is very unique. You actually come from an area. I don't know how familiar you are with. I have an acting background. I
Okay.
don't know if you know who August Wilson is.
Yeah, I know August Wilson.
Yeah. So for those people who don't know, where were you? Where are you from?
Pittsburgh, PA.
Right. Uh, and you spent some time in the Hill District, right?
I grew up. Well, that's one of the places I grew up. I grew up in two neighborhoods in the city. One the first half of my life was the Hill District, and the second half was, or not life, but half of my childhood, 0 to 18. The first 9 years I lived in the Hill District, in the Terrace Village projects, and then the next 9 years I lived in Northview Heights projects across town.
Yeah. August Wilson is a playwright. I think personally he's probably between him and Tennessee Williams, probably the greatest American playwright. And he talks about the Hill District in Pittsburgh, specifically about the black family. He did something called the Century series, where he basically chronicled every decade of the 20th century in that Hill District. So it was really interesting. So you grew up in the projects. What was that experience like for you growing up there?
Oh, it was miserable. Okay, I say that, but you got to remember that, like, it's a matter of comparison, and I guess looking back at it now as an adult, it still looks pretty bad. When I was a kid, it didn't seem that crazy. That's just what you get used to. That's how you know. In fact,
Right.
that's all I knew until I was 14. So I didn't think it was that bad, but I quickly realized just kind of how crazy it was where I lived when I started going to other places, and then as I got older and I got to really be able to see it with mature eyes, because now at this point, once you turn 36, you're an adult longer than you were a kid,
Right.
and I'm 37 now, and I'm like looking back and able to see these things and like, wow, kind of messed up, but you make it through it and you come out all right. Pretty much though, like in terms of like what it's like, there are what they call an at-risk youth and all the things that kind of come with that. The single mom, the public housing, and the public assistance. Those are that's the trifecta, I guess. And together it comes, and you end up in a neighborhood or an area with other people like that, and that type of environment breeds a lot of other issues that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, even if you're not involved in the lifestyle that will perpetuate those. And what I mean is, even though I never sold drugs or involved in gang activity, I've seen my fair share of shootings and lived next door to drug dealers and dealt with people on the way to and from school. A lot of violence in the schools I went to, particularly my middle school. I think my middle school was the first public school in the city to have metal detectors, and
Wow.
I think they became standard eventually. But it was that kind of environment. You just get used to it. But looking,
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, looking back, it's the kind of thing I'd never want to go through again. But it's not like. Uh, I always feel so torn. I'm like, how bad was my life? It was pretty rough, though.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it too is I look at where I am now, and I know I'm very happy where I'm now in my life. Extremely happy, not just in terms of like anything material, but the mindset I have and how I approach it and relate to people and the relationships I've built. But I know that I would not be the person I am today had I not gone through those things. They almost destroyed me in many ways, not just at the moment, but the remnants of it. And you're dealing with things you got to figure out how to be a a normal person and relate with other people and deal with your issues because you don't
Mm,
get any kind of training or support when you're coming up. Certainly, that's one of the reasons why you have issues in the first place. But certainly it gets worse as you get older because the older you get, the less sympathy the world has for you. You know,
right.
if I do something crazy, now they're gonna be like, "Yo, we don't care what happened. That was years ago," and this would be the same deal if I did something wild when I was 26, 27. Man, it'd be all a mess. So to just sum that up, it's a really rough place, and a lot of people don't become who I am from that.
Mm.
But certainly within that, it, the seeds of greatness can be made. I mean, it's a really rough environment, and it tends to weed out or consume people who aren't strong enough to get through it.
Do you know who Shelby Steele is?
I do not. Who is that?
Oh, so Shelby Steele is a writer. He's biracial, but he talks about basically issues in the black community. He's more on the conservative side, so he's not on the other side of sort of what I call the race hustlers, the people sort of profiting off of,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. I mean, the name speaks for itself. But he talks about social capital. Um, he has a book called it's not Stop Helping Us, but basically it's the whole notion of like sort of SJWs and sort of these white liberals that are you know that want to help really really badly, and he talks about, he's like don't do that stuff. He speaks about social capital because you get a lot of black kids that are growing up in certain neighborhoods, and I want to put a caveat because people talk about like black people as if every black person sort of grew up in this environment, and they don't.
Yeah.
You talk about 40 million people. Like that's not right. It's not really accurate. But he talks about social capital, and that's one of the things he had to learn when he came out into the world and realize, oh man, there's a bunch of lessons I just didn't. There's just things I just didn't understand. What I want to know is, because you said somebody who has to be strong enough to navigate that environment. What specifically did you do? Um, what revelations did you come to say, okay, I got to move in a different way so I don't wind up a statistic?
um. Well, the first thing that I think made a big difference is that I didn't fit in, and that's just luck, right? I for whatever reason I wasn't a popular kid. A lot of the things, like I wasn't good at sports, for example, and that was like a big piece of currency. I just wanted to like play video games, read my books. I really enjoyed that, and that probably protected me. No, not probably. It definitely protected me. Um, and as I got older, one of the interesting things that happened in our school district is they had this program. They called it the gifted program, where they like they test your IQ or whatever and see how bright you are. If you after over a certain point, you go to a different school one day of the week. Uh, that was amazing for me. It's one of those experiences you don't. It doesn't seem like much when you're young, but what it's doing is it's planting the seeds and it's getting me around different people because most of us don't get to cross the socioeconomic barrier that way. So we're not even aware of what exists, let alone have an aspiration to reach to it. But because for one day of the week, I got to go be around people we were matched by a genetic component, right? But
Right,
whatever give us the inside IQ, right? And that did not discriminate or select based on your income or where you went to school. Certainly, fewer of me in my environment than of them in theirs,
right.
and there is obviously a nature component to that, but. But that's one of the luckiest things that happened to me because I got exposed to a different environment very early on in my life. It never made sense for me to just want to be where I was, and I got to see there's another way, and I got to see that very early and so I never bought into I needed to be like a ball player. Never bought into I needed to get fast money because I understood very early that you can make a good living being smart and it wouldn't land you in jail. So
Hmm.
like I took that route. and it was a good route for me, I think. Um, my mom loved me. Mom's flawed in a lot of ways, but one of the things she did really well, and I didn't realize this until maybe a few years ago, of reading about this effect on children is my mom. You know, she showed love to us. She always had books in the house. She liked reading. I remember that a lot. She liked reading a lot of books, and like we had a like this like subscription to like we got Dr. Seuss book like once a month, and we're always looking forward to that. Little things, cultivating the love of other stuff, and
Right.
teaching us how to entertain ourselves. So that by the time I got to elementary school, I was able to read fine. I took out books from the library and I entertained myself with fiction books. You know, that I'm convinced that makes a big difference because, and on top of that, you know, I even now I have a natural respect for authority. I am not rebellious for the sake of being rebellious, nor do I listen because someone says I should listen. I simply weigh out how things look, and I try to behave most optimally for myself. That probably kept me out of a lot of trouble too. Not as much as like if I was like straight up afraid, but it there were people I didn't want to have anything to do with. Like I could see even as an 11 or 12-year old that over there that wasn't the way. I didn't know what the best way was, but I knew some of that stuff was not for me.
Right. Now you're a pretty big guy. We're like 6'1", 215, 220.
Yeah,
Right. You fought in the heavyweight division, correct?
yeah. It was small though. I
Yeah.
should have cut weight and went to cruiser.
Right. But like in normal, just a normal people, you're a big guy. Like,
Oh
outside
yeah,
of that
yeah.
arena, right?
But outside of it's weird, man. When you 6'1", 6'1", when I fought, I was between when I was a pro, I was like 215, right? Because it's just a high level of training. And then when I was a really high level amateur, I was probably like 220, 225. And the way the heavyweight division works now, I actually wrote an article about this recently, put on my site, outlining why I stopped fighting. One of the big reasons is I am terribly undersized for it. I'm like 6'1", 220. That's like bigger than 95% of men. Like
Right.
that's not, but that is like on the lower end of heavyweights. Like in fact, like no one that small is ever gonna like seriously compete ever again. It's just everyone's
Mm.
6'7" now. It's crazy. But yeah, I wasn't a small guy. I've never been a small guy.
Did that make you though, in a weird way, a target in that environment?
Okay, so I've thought about this. I don't think it made me a target for a few reasons. One, I just I because man, I didn't spend a lot of time out there, right? And
Right.
there's
Right.
there's a real there's a pretty big event in my life, and that when I turned 14, we'll get to, but focusing on pre 14 because this is where it's most relevant. Uh, I actually grew kind of along pace with everyone else. In fact, I think I graduated middle school, eighth grade. You know, I think at like 13. I graduated there. I was like 5'11". I didn't peak out at 6'1" until my senior year. All right.
Mm.
Now, what was this got to do with the size? I wasn't so big that people were like, let's go after that guy. Let's recruit
All
him. But
right.
when I was big enough to where people were like, let's not bother that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so it's a weird place. And I hear one of the things I started doing, and we get this now. So when I was 14, I went to a high school across town, completely different, background, kids I didn't know. But once again, one of those little things makes a huge difference in my future because I don't have any friends prior to age 14. Yeah, that's like my life didn't really exist. Like I
Mm.
know people, but in terms of some people I kick it with or no, nothing. All of the friends I have, my best friends, my girlfriends, most of them I met when I was 14. And then there's like a handful I met when I started fighting at 22. But like other than that, I don't have a life prior to that. Now when I turned 14, I still live in the same neighborhood, but I finally start playing football. and turns out I'm like not bad at football at all.
Mm,
And one of the pieces of currency in the hood is sports. You tend to any bit of notoriety you can get for your athletic achievements tends to do the opposite. Not the opposite. It's no longer if you ever were going to be a target for any type of thing. Now you're not. Instead, what you become is kind of this piece of admiration,
right.
and people are not interested in really doing anything with you. To you, it's the second best thing you could have, short of like having family actually in the game. Is being good at sports, and I was pretty good at the position I played.
What position did you play?
I played defensive end. I was fantastic, undersized. I never grew too big.
Yeah.
Uh, I read these stories about these guys. Like I think it was like Rodman. It was like 5'11" until he was a janitor and then blew up 8 inches. And I was like, "What? That
Oh
never
wow.
happens to people." Didn't happen to me. So I always tell my sister. My sister's 5'11" because
Wow.
my mom was 5'9" and my dad was 6'3", and I always tell her every time I'm standing next to her, I go, man, I got shortchanged. If I was as tall relative to the average man as you are to the average girl, I should be 6'6", man. And I got shortchanged though.
I was a nose tackle, but I was undersized too. I was about 5'8", 215.
Yeah. Anybody? No spots in the league for that position.
No, bro. I'm glad I was a good actor, and I read a lot of books and stuff like that, so it was all good.
Yeah,
You said something in one of your interviews that actually I've heard Kevin Samuels say, which I'm sure you know who Kevin Samuels is,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
You said I had a lot of single mother energy in me. Um, can you explain what you meant by that?
Oh man, yeah. So one of the things, and fortunately, I think I've purged most of it, but who knows, right? You never know
Right.
till you know. Uh, my mom, and I think single moms everywhere out there have to do this, but my mom, this is what I saw. She learned to get things done by showing her ass. That's what she used to
Mm,
call it. She used to say, I'm gonna go down here, I'm gonna show my ass, which means basically be loud, be aggressive, be abrasive. Okay, that naturally does not you understand, like it's weird. One of my survival mechanisms growing up that I continue carrying with me to this day, I am like, I'm not deadpan, but I come with a naturally high level of emotional control.
mm,
So I don't have a problem staying cool. My issue was always being direct and speaking without pretense and without worrying about offending or making people mad. It's something I've had to struggle with, but it's an important trait I think all men have to develop. And
right.
a kid can't develop that trait uh, in an environment where it's punished, and it tends to be punished in a place where there's not immediate influence. Because what happens is, your parents got to parent you, and they do the best they can, and there's only so much energy they have to parent you. And so what ends up happening is she means well. She goes, speak your mind, whatever, but you speak your mind, and that's not met positively.
Mm,
And on top of that, every time there's like some kind of issue or problem, rather than talk and reason and try to help us learn from it, it's about control and get things done expeditiously, because she doesn't have the tools to get us to understand, to get us to learn, right? So it's do as I say, not as I do. That's a lot of times what we heard, because then I
right.
didn't have the disciplinary awareness to be a good example. So on the one hand, I've got this natural predilection towards keeping myself calm and controlled, and not flying off the handle. And I probably, who knows where I'd be if I didn't have that ability, right? On the other hand, I don't have the ability to speak directly. I'm a mistrustful kind of in general of adults, and I never. I don't know what stability looks like, let alone try to aim for it.
Correct.
Uh, so so instead, everything from how I interact with other men um, to how any of my relationships went for a long time. Uh, they're chaotic, kind of like I
Mhm.
understand intellectually what it means to be a leader, but I don't viscerally feel it. So they're not natural movements. They're not. It's not easy for me.
Um, well, I appreciate that. That's something that I've actually heard a lot. I have some experience with that myself, but there seems to be some of that a lot, definitely in the water in our society now. There's this like really insane emotionalism and sort of lack of directness and lack of forthrightness and lack of in many respects, I guess, integrity. I'm not saying that that's your case necessarily, but like there's a thing with men especially. It's like that directness and sort of like the no bullshit. Like this is it's like, dude, you're lying, you're wrong. You know what I mean? And it's lacking in a lot of the men today, and I've definitely dealt with it. And I partially think, and you tell me, it's one, it's we don't really see these examples on television. Because like it or not, right? Like that's where people consume sort of their archetypes is television, film, whatever you're seeing in the media. Like I read a bunch of books, but most people don't read books. Like they're not reading shit about ancient kings and stuff like that, right?
Yeah,
Like you're obviously well read, and so what they're seeing, and then the relationships they have with their fathers at home, like that's how they map the world. Um, and now more and more kids don't have masculine in schools that because I taught in the Department of Education, like it's out like the women outnumber them 1 7 to 1, something like that, or 8 to 1, something like that. The
yeah,
teachers. So a little boy, exactly, because this is a channel for men. It's like from the time he's like born to 4, his mother is his primary caretaker. Then he goes to elementary school, all women, middle school, all women, high school, the majority of women, and now even in college. So that sort of that way that men communicate with one another, that straightforward way, it's like most men or a majority of men, I think, don't even get that. Like they don't even
nope.
they don't even know what it looks like. And when they encounter it, it's sort of like it's a lot. You know what I mean?
It, man, I went back to speak at a program that I was part of, and in that program, it was an after school thing for what I did. It was for like minorities, and then they expanded the mission. But it was kids pretty much from it wasn't even kids from my background, just minorities. Okay, uh, and the woman who had called me back, who was actually one of my mentors when I was there, she said, you know, young men, the kids aren't the boys are being neglected. She felt
Right.
they're not getting the direction that they need, and they're not seeing a lot of role models. And when you consider this, like it's only it's hard as a young man growing up because you figure if you grow up in that environment at home, there's no male role model. You go to school, most of your teachers are going to be female. Certainly in
7 to 1.
elementary school, yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think about. I don't think I had a single male teacher in elementary school. I actually had a bit of a stack in the middle school, which is weird. But then I got to high school. Once again, lights off. You don't see anything, and so that has an effect on you, and you don't even realize it. I think. For example, did you know? I made a presentation about this time how we're failing young men. Did you know the young men are 4 to 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD?
Mm.
And one might go, okay, this might be something in boys, right? If somehow you wanted to like buy that argument, but when you look at the ADHD numbers over the past 20 or so years, there's been a sharp increase in both. Actually, more like 30. I keep forgetting, man. It's 2022. More like 30 years. There's been a sharp increase in the numbers. Period. And you would expect it to be symmetrical, but it's not. And one of the reasons for this is we look at the way what boys are, and because so much of the environment that they're expected to be brought up in is fem centric,
Mm-hmm.
we look at the boys as basically defective girls and are treated as such.
Right.
No free. And it's hard for a guy because I'm in my, well, I guess technically late 30s now. Boy, that's weird. My birthday was Tuesday. I turned 37, and I guess I'm in the last third of the 30s.
Happy
But
belated. I'll be there in June. Don't worry about
thanks.
it.
But one of the things that you probably notice, I mean, you talk to a guy who's 20, it's a very different conversation. My experience anyhow, you it, it's a very different conversation because their entire life they have been surrounded by a I'm trying to think of a better pronoun, by something that is not them, which are
Right.
women. And naturally the environment is going to lean towards them because and we got to look at like the other way around. People go, oh, what when there was more men in education than women, more men went to college. But you got to remember there was a different dynamic. I was just listening to Jordan Peterson talk about this, and he said something really interesting. He said, "Girls will play boys' games, but boys won't play girls' games."
Right.
What he meant by that was that when the dynamic shifts in favor of women, uh, there tends to be applause and support both from men and women. Oh, more women are going to college, more women are graduating from high school, more women involved in sports, etc. You get congratulations from both ends. But imagine the other end. Imagine if there were more guys in dance and cheerleading and nursing. The the response wouldn't be so supportive from men and women. It's very
Right.
different.
Well, if a guy, and look, nursing, especially here, I live in New York. A nurse is gonna make probably six figures. I got
Oh,
family members
easy.
that do. I do. But like, if I see, there have been times in my life where if I see a male nurse, I'm like, why don't you just become a doctor, bro?
Right.
I'm like, why did you just do the? You know what I mean? Like, automatically in my head. So it's funny that you say that.
Yeah, I talked to Daryl Davis on the. I had a great opportunity to have an actual phone call with the guy, and it was awesome. It was a 2 hours Zoom call. We're going through stuff, and he's like, do you think you have any prejudices? We're talking about like, are you familiar with Daryl Davis and his work?
No, 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 no.
So Daryl Davis is the black guy that went and made friends with people in the Klan,
Oh
and
yeah, yeah. I think I saw clips of him on. He was on Joe Rogan, right?
yeah, but
Oh, okay.
awesome guy, right? And so he goes, and so he gives me this scenario. He goes, a a car, a family gets in the, and there's a crash, and a crash on the border, and one half goes to the everyone's killed, but the person driving and their kid, and they both need surgery immediately, and the son is taken immediately to the hospital, and the surgeon walks in and looks at the kid to do surgery, and the surgeon goes, "I can't operate on the kid. That's my son." And I was sitting and listening to it. I was like, "How is that possible?" And it's because the doctor is a female, right? And he was driven by the surgeon was a female, and he was driven by a male. But he did that to prove a point. And I'm sure I messed up the wording, but he did that to prove a point that a lot of times we have these prejudices that we're not even aware of. And we were talking about it in the context of race, but porting it over to this conversation in the context of like sex, when you when you were brought up and everyone around you conforms to or is supported for their femininity. And at the very least, we know that if you're too masculine, because we know boys have a problem sitting still. That's because there's lots of energy, you want to go out and run, and that's treated as a problem.
Right.
Then what does that do to you up here by the time you become a young adult?
I mean, it causes, at the very least, it causes a severe case of neuroses, right? Like, I think I'm not a psychotherapist, so obviously I don't
Yeah.
know, but there are enough men with serious psychological issues, or at least like they're kind of off to warrant like paying attention to that. I mean, if you think about sort of like school shootings, because I know you had mentioned Elliot Rogers, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, what I didn't I saw a little bit of the videotape. I didn't read his, I guess it's his manifesto or whatever it was. I guess he has like some journal entries or something. It's like, but I was asking myself, it's like, what would drive a kid like this, that if you look at him, looks normal, drives a
Yep.
decent car. I don't have a BMW, right? Like, he's going to a university in a first world country. Like what would drive this kid to do that stuff? And he's not the only person that expressed the things that he was expressing. Obviously, murdering innocent people is wrong,
Yeah.
objectively. But there are enough men that are frustrated and are saying the things that he was saying and expressing them the way that he was expressing them, that obviously this leads to men not really understanding and being unbelievably confused as to who and what they are. And I think Jordan Peterson was so popular, he blew up so much because he actually came out and said what everybody else was sort of thinking already. And he was coming from a place of authority, because one, he's a doctor, two, he's a psychotherapist, three, he was in academia, and he wasn't some scrub. The dude taught at Harvard and at University of
Yep.
Toronto, right? So this guy knows what he's talking about. And what I was saying before is sort of like the lack of male figures in even film, right? Like, if you read something like the Iliad, it's obviously a very masculine story, but anyone can read it and get something out of it, right? Like, if you
Mm.
just have an open mind. But these stories, they really were, boys would read these stories and they're like, okay, well, this is what I have to be, this is what I have to look forward to. Cool. Like, there's a map. I know exactly what it looks like. I
Yes.
know exactly where I have to go. Boom. And we're men. We're very much like, okay, what is the target? Just tell me what the target is, like, and I'll hit it.
Right.
I just tell me what it is, and I'll go. Just. But when you obfuscate that, right, and you blur the target, and then all of us guys are like, I don't know where to go. Like, I don't know what to do. And men have been so confused for so long. They're getting all of these mixed signals: how to deal with women, like how to interact with women, how to interact with with other men. The same thing you were saying before, which is like, if you're too masculine, as if that's such a thing. Like, how do you think all these bridges and shit got built? You think it
Yeah.
was soy boys out here building the Brooklyn Bridge and skyscrapers and stuff like that? No, you
What
know.
what's happened, unfortunately, is that the most negative aspects of what it means to be a man, or rather, the most negative displays of masculinity. That's what's taking the forefront, and that's what happens all the time.
Right.
People tend to, for good reason, remember the more negative representations and examples of a group than the more positive ones.
Right.
It's like that old joke. If you, I'm trying to, man, I can't even think of a non X-rated version of it, man. That's how crazy it is. But it's like if you build, okay, right. If you build 100 bridges and smoke, I always say, if you build 100 bridges and smoke crack once, you're not a bitch brother who smoked crack. You're a crackhead that built bridges. Like that's that's uh if you want to see something funny, just on a side note, when I was like, man, I can't think of the non-X-rated version. There's a version of that in this movie, Play It to the Bone, with Woody Harrelson and Antonio Banderas, about boxing. It's really funny. But I definitely am not going to say that one on the podcast. But the point about about bringing that up is that we always remember the negative version, and that's
Right.
what we
Right.
use to color things. Somewhere along the line, in society, and I'm sure people have tried to put a year on it or get or pinpoint it. Oh, we decided that it was almost indistinguishable. Well, no, not
Yeah.
almost. We decided that the good and the bad were no longer indistinguishable. And because of how humans perceive things, then we focused on the negative. And here's the kicker about this. This is the crazy part. Because of how men are designed, it's really a perfect weapon. Because of how men are designed, you can't even complain about it. You can't complain about it to women because they're not going to sympathize with you. They're not going to listen. And you can't complain about it to other men because men are going to be go like, "Oh, what the fuck, bro? Man up!" Like it's the weirdest thing. It's like if there's something because you're still at your core, man. You men don't complain. We just kind of
Yeah,
take
yeah,
it. Like imagine, could you imagine like being on the Titanic and somebody and they go, all right, women and children first, and a bunch of dudes are like, yo, what the fuck you mean women and children? And they're like, no, other dudes will be like, what's wrong with you, man? Like that's just how we are. See, that's why deserting and dodging drafts is such a big
yeah,
deal
yeah, 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 yeah.
because the idea is like no one wants to go to war, right? That's
Nobody.
why there was a draft in the first place.
Right.
Okay, so as part of being here, that's your duty, and we decided. And now that's part of it. The other part, not to complain, but the other part is there was not a. There's always been this kind of unwritten contract. Once again, like the women and children thing,
Right.
the unwritten contract that we had was if something goes down, I'm gonna die. You're like I'm gonna willingly give my life to protect you. All I need you to be is there for me, and in whatever way that meant. Now, granted, the contract's not perfect, but the contract was even to a certain as even as one can make these things. All right, uh, yeah, you couldn't just divorce your wife. I mean, that's why alimony was a thing, man, because motherfuckers
Right.
were trying to be guys were trying to be scumbags. It's like, nah, man, nope. Look, you can leave, but you're not gonna leave her broke. That's kind of like the thing, okay? Um, Today now, with all the progress, much of the reasoning for those codes has been abolished, and I think that's a really good thing. The problem is when we want the code to remain and still suit us. And here's what I'll even say, because guys go, oh, what's the one to comment? You want to like earn your own money and be independent, but also pay for date. I don't have a problem with this, right? Because, or rather, it's not that I have a problem with it. The kind of issue that we run into is like that's like built into us. That's our nature.
Hmm.
Like I don't think a man has to be taught that he wants to naturally take care of the women in his life. I really think that's an innate thing.
I mean, it's a
When it's
reflex. You don't even think
leveraged
about it.
in a certain way, then it turns into something really ugly.
Right. Um. Then with that said, though, it seems to be like nefarious people because I don't. I'm not going to put on my tinfoil hat and think it's necessarily a cabal, right? Because that's really easy to do nowadays, especially now, right?
Yep.
Um. But there are nefarious groups of people, although a minority, but a very loud minority, that are sort of stoking that fire and increasing the wedge between men and women, or very, at the very least, fanning the flames of animosity is too strong of a word, but you know what I mean, like sort of the tension between us now.
Because there's a benefit in the tension and the animosity.
Right.
Once you see this, you can't unsee it anywhere else, and you realize that that's what drives everything. The news and the media by itself is relatively worthless. And I don't mean that in the
Yeah.
sense of like we don't need it. I mean, from an economic standpoint, where one provides goods or services and you exchange money, and we take those goods and services and ideally use them to either improve our quality of life or make more resources to procure more resources. Uh, the news has no bearing there. All right,
Mm.
has no weight. And at some point, we had to figure out how to pay these people and how to make money, or not even how to pay these people, but I guess it's like kind of a secondary effect. but for how they're gonna make money. And I really believe that they understood something that we just talked about. Negativity. We are designed to seek and pay
Yes.
attention to that. If the more divisive you can make something, the better it does. And all types of sharing metrics. If it bleeds, it leads came from somewhere. That's because we pay attention to negativity. So if you take that, uh, any podcast, any show, any mainstream news, any alternative news that focuses on what's wrong instead of providing solutions, instead of providing hope, the engagement and the shares are going to be 10x.
Yeah.
I'm a I have a pretty decent reach on social media, and I'm really proud of the way I built that reach. But I know that if I was all about uh, pointing out the things that are wrong and fan and race bait, politics bait, talking, I refuse to talk about the mask mandates and COVID and all that.
Right.
Um, I know that those things can help me explode and grow, right? But I don't want to build anything close to a foundation on that. That's a conscious choice. Most people, the lure is too strong,
Mm.
and they don't even realize how they contribute to the problem.
Isn't that though the essence of um, transcendence, art, beauty, higher forms? Is to say, because we have base natures and we can give into them 24/7, 365, especially now, right? Like if you look at the obesity problem, obviously sloth was one of the 7 deadly sins. If you're
Yep.
a Christian, so is envy, right? You know, and but to consciously say I'm not going to engage in that, I'm going to rise above it and reach for something higher. That is the essence of what all art and what all beauty and what all higher forms of being are really about, right? Like Elon Musk isn't out here commenting on Donald Trump or whatever. He might be or whatever, but he's like
Well,
focused
he
on
is
going to
not.
Mars.
Well, but here's the thing, right? Elon Musk can do it because he he's reached a level where he's like, oh, let's go have some fun or whatever.
Right.
Like or here's another way to put it: Elon gains nothing. If anything, he loses. Um, but he already put the work in and grew his companies and his contributions to humanity. All right, he doesn't need to do it either way. He might just like doing it, having fun, but it's not a source of revenue for him or a source of growth or anything like that. People know who Elon Musk is with or without social media.
Right. Um, and on that point, I want to bring up you talked about he put in the work. There was a moment in your time where, if it's fair to say, I guess you sort of weren't on the track that you're on now.
Mm-hmm.
You were going in a different direction. Can you talk to the audience about sort of like how you transitioned from coming up from a difficult environment? How'd you got into boxing? Like talk about how you got into boxing and
Oh,
why you chose it.
so my boxing journey is interesting, man. I didn't really have a desire to fight. Like it wasn't like that thing like, ooh man, I gotta go fight. That was never me. It was interesting, but who knew, right? But I remember when I dropped out of college the first time, and really I failed out the first time. I decided to go on this like anti-college tirade.
Mm.
Part of it, because college to me wasn't anything. It wasn't. I was watching people do different jobs than what they trained in a degree for, or do jobs without a degree. And to me, college was nonsense. Now I still harbor that perspective. The difference now is I got a degree in physics. You can't tell me shit. I went through the system. Like before you could say, oh man, you're just mad you didn't finish. Now it's like, man, you did something I couldn't even do, right?
Right.
Now we got to really engage with your points and pay for it out of pocket and everything. But one of the people I would talk to about this all the time was was the mother of this girl I was dating, who happened to also be a professor at the University of Pittsburgh. And so you can imagine that conversation and that class doesn't go over too well. One day she was like, let's pretend that you're right and college is pointless and worthless. Well, what have you done with your life for the past 4 years other than come here and eat my food? And she was right, or she threw me out first, but she was right.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, she I had done nothing. I had become obsessed with her daughter and was like, I took jobs to make sure I could stick around.
mm,
Um, and that's why I was working at Starbucks. I wasn't really pushing myself to become better anywhere. So I was like, yeah, man, I have to do something about this. This is no good. So I looked at ways that I could beef up my life resume, or as they are, as like the most interesting man in the world says, I could look for ways to start beefing up my obituary. And I came across two things 'cause I couldn't afford to go back to school. Plus, I didn't think I had the math skills to do anything worthwhile. And I at least understood that if you're not going to school for math, what's the point? It never made sense to me,
yeah, yeah.
or not for math, but something that involves numbers and hard science. So I said, all right, I got the army and boxing. That's what it came down to, because YouTube was just blowing up, and I was able to look at videos of people fighting. I said, oh, this looks cool. I could do this, but we had just started really, pushing into Iraq, and I was like, "Fuck that, man! I'm not going there." So I went and found a gym, walked in, and I had a certain attitude about going in. I said, "I'm not going to quit. I'm going to stick with it and see how far it takes me, how far we go." And 12 years later, I I think I had a great boxing career, really good amateur career. Really did a lot of things guys don't do, especially as an amateur. I had a great time, and it really transformed me the correct way as well.
Specifically, how?
Well, okay, so I can give you a few specifics, not like big meta lessons, but whatever, right? Number one, you learn, I have a different relationship with pain and hardship than I think the average person does. Because one of the things you quickly figure out training is that you never feel good. Like
Mm,
you want to get better, but no one really wants to be in the gym. Especially on days in like the middle of the summer, you want to be out drinking, but otherwise you're gonna embarrass yourself. So you gotta be in that gym 4 to 6 hours a day. You learn the value of sacrifice and kind of what is it, delayed gratification, because there were certain jobs that once I decided I was going to go as far as I could with boxing, I would not do a job that didn't allow me to train, even if it paid less or the hours were shit.
mhm.
That's how I ended up working at a homeless shelter, right? Because I needed a way to train. I wasn't going to give up training because I said, okay, this looks like something I can do well and I can see a future here. And I don't know where that future is going to be. Like this is way before, not way before, but like nobody had a Twitter account or putting stuff on YouTube. In fact, right
Right.
when I was coming up, guys were like, don't put it on YouTube so they see your fights. Like that's where we were. Now we're like, man, put it on YouTube so you can get more money. Like that's where we are
Yeah.
now. Um, so it was fun of that. But that right there, that sacrifice to become better, and I took a lot of risks. One of my favorite stories when I switched trainers near the end of my amateur career, and then Tommy and Kello ended up being my trainer for the rest of my career, my whole pro career, and when I first started training with him, I had a busted car. It was like a $400 car, man. And I don't know if you ever drove a $400 car, but you get exactly what you pay for when you get a $400 car. My license was suspended. I couldn't pass inspection. I couldn't afford insurance. Horn ain't work. Heat ain't work. Gas ain't like it was a bunch. I mean, it was a bad thing to drive in. In retrospect, it's really one of them things that like if I had more sensible people in my life, like I think about like my girl now. Uh, she, I can hear her voice yelling at me not to drive that thing, right? Or she wouldn't get in it if we were dating or whatever. But that's what happens when you get older. You with somebody, right? But when you freaking 23, man. It's everything's crazy. But I had to draw that to go to get to his training because he was that far away.
Yeah.
And so I said, all right, I'm gonna figure this out because if I get pulled over, I'm going directly to jail. So I had to drive. I'm learning how to look behind me, 3, 4 cars back. I knew all the plates to pull over in case the cops were behind me, so they didn't run my plates and realize that I was driving so dirty. And because I took that risk, I ended up winning the state championship and then going to the nationals where I got recruited to this outfit out in LA that completely changed my life. Where I won a national title as well. Uh, that experience, those risks, those make you, man. You get to see what happens when you believe in yourself. I learned how to be likable, but not be a pushover.
Hmm.
Because one of the things you got to do when you coming up on the amateur and pro circuit is you have to sell your own tickets. Like for my first 6 fights before I got signed with Rock Nation, I don't think I made more than $700 for a fight, and that's before I got to pay everybody. And that's because I'm selling my own tickets, taking a cut out of the percentage. It was like 25%, I think I got. So you got to convince people. Well, you got to convince them. You got to convince them to come and drive. Usually about an hour because I didn't fight in PA. I fought in West Virginia,
Mm.
about an hour away. It was just easier to build your record up there and get practice. And there weren't any venues. Now there's like 3 venues in the city to have fights, including like I was just at one down at the casino, which is nuts. Like the main casino in Pittsburgh, they got this whole area built. When I fought at the casino, I fought at the casino at Pittsburgh once, and it was outside. We had a main day and a rain day contingency because they didn't have the space they have now. But
Wow.
that was wild. That was 7 years ago at this point that I had that fight. No, 6 years ago because it's 2022. Yeah, but the point is like things change, right? Um, so I learned how to be self-sufficient, take risks, sacrifice, be likable. I got a little bit of an introduction to being in business for myself because you're pretty much in business for yourself when your livelihood depends on selling these tickets, man. And yeah, it's a great thing I went through. I can't recommend it to anyone else because it's miserable. For example, I'm talking about the positives and the things I got out of it. Let's talk about the risk. I don't have health insurance most of the time I'm fighting. Now,
Right.
if you get injured during the fight, if it's a sanctioned bout, there's a blanket insurance policy and you can be all right. But the 2 injuries I've had, I didn't get those during a fight. I got them during practice.
Mm.
Fortunately, the one I got that required surgery, that's when I was in LA. They footed the whole bill, no issue, because I was an employee of an outfitter basically, but they were paying me to train. And then the second time I got injured really bad, I had health insurance and I was like, awesome, but yeah, that's a lot of fighters' reality though. No health insurance because it's a poor man's sport. Um, but yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, it seems to me like, especially with boxing, used to be way bigger. I think. I mean, and you're probably more familiar, obviously, with the sport than I am, but it seemed to me that in the '60s, '70s, and '80s, boxing was much bigger than it is now. Um,
yeah, it was.
yeah, I mean, the UFC probably has something to do with that. I mean, they're sort of taking a lot of those.
Well, one of the things this is interesting because I looked into this because I like data
Yeah,
I like whenever someone makes an argument like UFC is bigger than boxing, if it is, it is. But I like to see the data
sure.
and kind of crunch it up. Um, First, like what boxing big relative to how it was, never going to happen again. And a big reason for that is at least in the United States, there's just too much competition. The contracts and the salaries are too high for the other sports. So if you have real athletic ability, the boxing ring is the last place you end up.
Right.
The first place you end up is on the gridiron, the diamond, the court, or the ring, like a rink. I, if you can jump and you're tall, and you're not coming to like you put a pair of boxing gloves on LeBron James. Man, he'd be champ in 2 years, if that, right?
Yeah,
But why would LeBron James put on a pair of boxing gloves?
right.
Like it would never happen. So there's that. But I was gonna say something else. Oh, right. Compared to the UFC, the UFC's got an interesting market relative to boxing. As far as I understand, looking at the numbers and what's being said, uh, so one of the things the UFC did really intelligently coming up and still does to this day is they just put on a pay per view like once a month.
Mm,
That's a great way, one, to generate revenue, but two, to kind of keep people interested. Boxing is built around the athlete. They build up superstars. They don't do that so much in the UFC, and that's reflected in the pay scales, which I understand have changed. But the sport, for the most part, focuses UFC on building up mixed martial arts, boxing on building up the boxer.
mm,
So, what does that mean for everybody? Well, when there's a popular fighter, boxing kicks UFC's ass, man. And boxing's done a really, first of all, they've been really lucky. Like extremely lucky because, or not extremely, but fortunate because the '90s was kind of this weird dry period, and we'll even say in to the part of the mid 2000s all the way up to like 2007 8, where all the big name fights, uh, they just weren't in the United States, okay, and then Floyd Mayweather comes along, and Floyd Mayweather really does some good stuff. But Floyd Mayweather doesn't really become Money Mayweather the way we know him today. That's not until 2010 ish. You
mm.
know, those fights don't happen until then. All right, but people still are interested in watching the game or watching the fights or whatever. And so Mayweather is big and it's coming up. You know, fortunately, we get some heavyweights to come back and bring that in, and then Triple G and Canelo Alvarez show up, and they run the the 2020s or 2010 to 20 year, and that's great for the sport because neither of those guys are American, but they've got a huge fan base.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's just a different business model. I think UFC appeals to a certain, like, I got a good buddy of mine. Um, he don't watch boxing. He loves UFC, and I always mess with him. I'll be like, "What you watching a fight tonight?" Whenever there's a big fight on, because that's what they started doing. They're smart. They started making people choose. Uh,
Mm,
and he's like, "Nah, I'm watching this." Oh, you're not watching this? You're not watching the Triple G Alvarez? So he was like, "What?" Like, I just found that it was on because it is, you know. Or when Errol Spence fought Terrence, not Terrence Crawford. When Crawford fought Porter, that was on the same night as a UFC card. I was messing with my buddy because I guess he went to a bar. He was down in New Orleans,
yeah.
and because the bars have an incentive, they got to pick which one to show, and almost always they're going to show the one with the greater views because they got to pay to show it, or they got to pay for a special license to show
Mm,
it. Unlike us, we pay $79.95 or something. A lot of times, they're paying four figures to show a fight at a bar, so they got to pick the one that's going to bring the most people in to buy drinks to break on that. So that usually will give you an idea. Rarely, not until we start talking about your big sports bars, or where you see both events on at the same time. But if you want to get a good feel for who's winning that battle, see which way when there's a competing card, see who's on. That'll tell you everything, man, because it's a pure money decision. They look at the numbers, look at their demographics, and they go, "All right,
it's funny. It's like because you hear so much, and I think part of the popularity, just from a layman's perspective, right? I've seen boxing matches. I've trained in MMA, but I was never really a fan of the sport. I think Joe Rogan has a lot to do with in many respects, sort of bringing people that otherwise wouldn't have been into
yep,
the UFC, at least getting curious about that. So, but I mean, that's good to know. So you went into the military, right?
yeah."
Talk to us a little bit about the your military experience, why you ended up going into it, and because I read in one of your articles that you had to make a decision because it was not necessarily a pleasant experience in the Missouri heat, and you had to sort of mind hack yourself a little bit in order to get yourself through that.
Yeah. So my military experience is, I mean, it's my experience. I guess it's my perspective. And so I enlisted when I was 28, which is a ripe. You know, I do everything in my
Yeah.
life late, man. I didn't start fighting until I was 22. Enlisted when I was 28. Uh, and I did it because I realized that boxing was going to be taken away from me one day, and I had too much ego for the position my life was in. Like, I was living at my buddy's house. I couldn't afford to live anywhere else. Um, and I'm like, how am I supposed to be me? How am I supposed to be at Lattimore? And I'm living in my buddy's house, man.
Right.
That doesn't fly. So
Right.
I said, I gotta put the I did that thing. 5 years. What are you gonna be? Am I gonna have more options or fewer options? And I said that to myself very blatantly before I enlisted, or while I was thinking about the enlistment process. And on January 4th, 2013, enlisted, or rather, took the oath. And it's funny, man. The universe is amazing. Sometimes I think about this stuff. I'm not the guy that's going to tell you, send vibes out there and power of attraction and all that shit. I'm not that guy, right?
Mm.
But I because of what I studied and how I think mainly because of what I studied. Uh, I my perspective is, just because we haven't proven it doesn't mean it can't exist, and it doesn't mean that even if it does exist, that we know how to use it consistently. In other words, like, I don't discount any higher power or coincidence or a law of attraction. I just don't rely on it
Mm.
as my strategy. But I think but one of the coolest things happened that I thought was miserable at the time. I wanted to ship off immediately, get the basic, get this thing over with, get on the road, right? The MOS I chose, the class didn't start. I'd have to ship out. I couldn't. I wanted to ship out immediately, like in January, and just delay my pro debut. Uh, but the class didn't start till a certain time. I had to, long story, I had to leave June 4th. That's when I
Mm.
had my first day of basic training, and because of that, I got 3 pro fights in, which was great. And I got to really form the basis bonding of the relationship with we'll be married soon, fiance wife, right? It was 10 years ago, right? And I'm so happy because she's such a uniquely well matched person to me that I don't like. I think like who I am now and then how I live and how I go about it, and then it's a cool problem to have, like I have to like remind girls that I have somebody, right? So I don't think I'd like have any trouble meeting women. But I am not a cool guy. Like, bro, I was excited, man. Death of the Nile came out. I was like, oh yeah, Poirot remake. I go to like classical concerts, man. I love the opera. In fact, uh I need to get my season tickets for the opera now that it's coming back. I play chess, man. I write. The only cool thing about my life, man, I travel a lot. I think that's what girl was. She was like, "Oh, he travels," but I'm not a cool guy. But she likes me, and I like her, and she's not she's dork, man. Like, it's a good time. But yeah, but we were talking about the military. But I bring that up to say I should have left like the end of January. Didn't worry because I'm like, man, I'm gonna run out of money because I'm broke too.
Yeah, yeah.
And it ended up being one of the best things that could have happened to me. Not shipping off until until June. But when I got there, it was hot as hell. in the middle of. I mean, I did basic from June to August. That's when I graduated. It's like August 13th or something like that. And and I was. I mean, it was hot, man. No other words for it. It was fucking hot.
Yeah.
I got over my fear of thought. I used to have a serious like fear, probably phobia, but lightning will actually kill you. So probably just a fear um, of lightning. Got over that because when you're marching, you got to march. You got to hold discipline. And one of our FTX exercises was at night in the middle of Missouri in a severe storm. It was so bad they had to put us in. They got these on East Old Base. They got these like big concrete huts that can hold like 20 people. And if there's ever a tornado like warning during a field exercise, you got to get to the nearest one. Well, there was one of those, and like so, I'm completely over it, right? Um, and it was really like the physical aspect wasn't tough, man. Um, because I was coming right out of like I had like my last pro fight was April 13th, and I shipped and I still was training and everything, sparring, staying
Yeah.
sharp. Because we had a plan. My coach was like, "When you come back, we're gonna be on it." And I was like, "When I come back, I'm gonna be on it." So we trained until I think I sparred the day before I left. Like it was so I was in shape.
Yeah.
Um, the I think the hardest what was hard about it? Nothing was hard per se. If I could do it over again, and I never want to do basic training over again, I would give myself more books. 'Cause- but you're not allowed to read, man. Like, so it doesn't really matter.
You're not allowed to
On
read?
Nope. The only book you can read in basic training, they can't keep you from reading a religious text because that's in like I think that's like the First Amendment, one of the conditions of the First Amendment. Like you,
Why don't they let you read?
um, the short answer is they just don't want to let you read, man. When you enlist, you give up you give up a lot of rights, man. People don't realize that. Like
Right.
for example, I can't be talking shit about the president on social media if I'm in the army. You could do
Right.
that when you're a civilian, not when you're in the army, right? But I think they do it because it's a concentration thing, man. You got to be able to focus. You got to go to sleep at night. I mean, dude, for the 10 weeks, you in bed by 8. I bet 4. It's a well-oiled machine, man. And I got through it, but it's not like basic training is interesting, and I think it reveals something really interesting about the human um, organism.
Hmm.
For like 95% of basic, all you gotta do is put one foot in front of the other. Like you ain't gotta think. All you gotta do is what they tell you to do and not be a fat ass. Like if you because you gotta pass the APFT
Right.
and you gotta be taped with basically pass the APFT. The only thing you gotta like think about is shooting. That's it. Okay, and to pass shooting, you gotta hit 23 out of 40 targets. And my shooting story is crazy, man. I thought I was in bad shape, man, because I failed my 3 tries. There was one try left that only a few soldiers got, and I passed with a 23 out of 40. And I was unbelievably relieved. I thought I was going to get recycled, and I'm pretty sure getting recycled is where they just put you back at the beginning. And
Ooh.
here's what's messed up, man. They don't go, oh, you failed today. Let's start over tomorrow. Like, no, you keep marching with your company for like 3 more weeks, and then you start again. So it's not like it's 10 weeks because it's 9 weeks plus a week of reception at the beginning. It's not like you just tack on and start it. Nah, you end up there like 20, 25 weeks, man. I wasn't about that life. Couldn't do
Yeah.
it.
What branch was it again?
The army.
Right. And you didn't get? Did you get shipped over or?
No, no, no. I was a local guy, man. I did National Guard because I had a plan. I went in with a plan, which was to get money for school and to learn from the army. Like my
Mm.
MOS was a land combat electrical systems repair. So I got a lot of which worked perfectly with a physics degree because I got even more hands-on work with circuits and stuff. I'm by no means an electrician, but I understand, how to set up a power supply or then a generator, things like that, how to work on small, simple circuits, troubleshoot stuff. But nowadays, man, stuff's so complex. I wouldn't even. Here's how complex stuff is. That was RMOS, and we sent stuff out
Mm.
when there was something crazy. Well, we'll just send it up. Man,
Right.
put a work order in.
Yeah. So I want to change gears a little bit. So you're in the RP space, right? Like or
Uh,
were at one point.
I my relationship with the red pill space right now is what's the best way to say this? I okay. I did a really good job, and then this all makes sense. Really on accident, mind you, wasn't trying to do this. I was just being me and producing the content that I felt passionate about, what was important to me, and how my life is.
Mm.
As a result, I have like people don't even think of me if they're like you know how there's some people when guys talk about the red pill, like there's certain names that come up regardless.
Right. Right.
I'm not even on the third degree of list anymore. I really believe that. Now maybe depending on how you rank it and who you know, but people just don't think of me like that. And I know that because whenever there's a red pill fallout, I don't get tagged anymore. Like
Mm.
it's been a long like you know when Roman McClay went and did that crazy shit, no one tagged me, because I don't run in those circles. Um, on everything, I'm trying to think about some other crazy stuff. Uh, Any of the stuff that was going on with like Jack Murphy, no one tagged me, right? Because and I don't want that stigma because at the end of the day, what I want to do is help people.
Right.
I don't help men. I don't. I'm not a dating coach, man. I couldn't tell you shit about the dating game. I've been on the game so long. I never had a Tinder, like, and not because I'm above Tinder. I just been with her so long, never got a chance to use Tinder, right?
Right.
To put that's not my deal. Um, now I can tell you, I got a few articles on my site about having a relationship, but that don't really sell tickets, you know. But I mean, at the end of the day, like I'll never say anything negative about the space because the space has got a lot of positive. There are some characters that I've decided to some consciously, some not consciously distance myself from. But I once again I think that comes back to the that thing we were talking about earlier, where some things are negative and people notice the most negative aspects,
Right.
and it does me no favors because here's the thing. Uh, the way I am, the way I built my brand that I'm developed out, uh, I lose a lot by going. I'm hardcore ripper. We're going to talk about everything about because a lot of it's pseudo hate women. Guys don't call it that, uh, but it's born out of a displeasure with the dating market and the other participant in it, women, right?
Right.
Now, when you say it like that, guys go, well, I guess so. But if you just go, you hate women, of course not, because no one thinks they hate women. I don't think guys hate women. They hate the way the interactions and the dynamic goes. And when you simplify an argument, which is what they do, uh, the easiest way to simplify it is go, oh, you dislike women. It's like, yeah, it's hard. It's a hard space for me to ride because, like, at this point, I'm showing up on podcasts that have heavy female listenership, and that if I was hardcore red pill guy, that would be crazy. Like, but I still no one will ever be like you denounce the red pill. I'll be like, ah, fuck you. Like you don't pay my bill. Like so I can maintain my loyalty to the ideas, and I regularly argue with people who have the incorrect idea, but what I found is that people love to attack the incorrect idea, and that's the simpler idea to group everyone into. And if I let
Mm.
myself get grouped into that idea, then I have way more problems than I need.
Right. And that latching onto the negative, I think, is actually a human survival mechanism. Actually,
Oh
Jordan
yeah,
Peterson talked about that. It's like you needed to, if there was like a rustle in the bushes and shit, like you needed to pay attention to that because that could be a saber tooth tiger trying to eat you, or if you know what I mean, like
right.
or a poisonous snake or whatever.
The way I always describe it to people, it's like, look here, because it's loss aversion bias.
Right.
Because look here, you're walking in the desert for 3 days. There's a puddle of water and some berries. that puddle of water is going to stand out to you a lot more because it's just a lot more important. Okay, and what is the penalty for missing it is a better way to look at it. Like, what do you lose? Well, if you miss out on the berries, you're gonna be okay. Little penalty. You miss out on the water, that might be a big deal. And
Mm,
so if we look at like it's like, catastrophic news. Now, most of us aren't in the proximity for it, but imagine if there was like, news around the tribe that, the other tribe was coming and they was coming to, take names and kick ass. You probably should pay a little more attention to that than the fact that somebody got their garden to finally sprout. And your brain is going to put that, ahead.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. The thing is with that space is, I mean, it was very important to me for sure. Especially as I was coming out of certain things, and I was like, whatever I'm doing ain't working,
Yeah.
and I need to go find another thing. And there was a speech that you did, being, I guess, red pill in the blue pill world, and
Oh, yeah. I love that
what.
speech.
Well, I loved it too, and one of the main things that first of all, when I came across you, I was like, okay, this dude is reasonable, he's level headed, he makes funny ass crackhead jokes. It's like, so I got to talk to this guy. But one of the reasons too is that I really got turned on by your message is when you said in that, you go, look, you got to exist in this world. You can't just. I think something along the lines of when you find the truth, you can't just go around bludgeoning people with it, basically, right?
Yeah.
And sort of like you're going to turn people off, you're going to lose friends, and you need people. You need to exist in this world. And so I was like, wow, man, like that is not something that I necessarily heard in the space, or a message that I've heard a lot from many of the guys that are in there. And again, I say this with respect because a lot of those men pulled me out of a very dark place for sure. How have you managed, specifically, and you touched it on the speech, but how have you managed to have the worldview that you've had and come out of it, but still been able to? Because I saw a picture of you with a cat and like at a Super Bowl party.
Yeah, man, that's fun. Fun. This is my best friend's cat. Well, okay, well, my best friend's girl's cat, but it's basically, they're together, so it's his
Yeah,
cat now.
yeah.
But no, so all right, so you are you familiar with the phases of like the red pill, right? Where, you got
Vaguely, I've heard them several times, but I can't name them offhand.
it's not a formal designation. The main point is that, because I don't think I can name them. It's like you go, okay, I'm in denial. Then it's like, oh wow, this is a thing. And then you're angry that it's a thing, and then you go, all right, well, it's like this. I gotta, adapt, or you just kind of accept and integrate it.
Right.
I really believe that. So I think every guy gets to, we'll call that step three, or the middle. I know there's like 5 steps. I actually put it in the speech. I can't remember. But that middle part, the anger part, I believe every guy gets there,
Sure.
as they should. Because if you've been doing this thing and everyone's told you this thing, and it's like, oh, really, it's this other way. Now, if you've been failing because you get it, that's one thing. But if you've been failing because you didn't know, and they've been telling you a bunch of stuff that don't work, you can be angry. So what's the next step? The next step is to do something to get the result you want. All
Mm.
right. This is what I think fudges a lot of guys up, because that difference between step three and step four, what the bridging gap is,
Right.
that is work and risk.
Right.
It's easy, like it's so easy to complain, right? Like you don't do anything, you just complain. Um, but when I say, all right, you're not getting the attention from girls that you deserve. Well, okay, well, how's your fitness? How's your income? How's your life? Are you an interesting guy? Are you doing? Are you gonna work? Have you worked on conversation? Okay, you got all that together. Where are you going to go meet girls at? Now everybody just gets on the internet, but there was a point where that was a valid question. But even still, what all that together, what are you doing? Are you walking up and talking to people? Are you doing these things? It's hard. Even if or either even once you like get to that point where you go, okay, this is what I have to do. It's hard to be attractive. That's why so few guys are. It's a
Right.
lot easier to be like, look, man. One of my favorite sayings that's mostly true. There's no such thing as an ugly girl, just a girl who doesn't try. Either meaning she either ate herself out of attractiveness, or she doesn't groom herself. And guys will still, the low status guys will still, poke with a stick like, hey, what's going on?
What about the crackheads though?
Crackheads will still do something, right? But
Wait, what's that old Patrice O'Neill joke where he's talking? You ever heard the Patrice O'Neill? Like they got a mix on YouTube.
Oh yeah, is it the
Where
one
he's
where
talking
he's
about the
talking about
girl behind the
the garbage
dumpster.
cans? Yeah, the garbage cans. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about. Yeah, the girl behind the dumpster. That exact. So yeah, but the point of that is like, yeah, even a girl could be a bum and it doesn't matter.
Right.
That's the trade of like nature was unbelievably fair and balanced. Like it's probably one of the few places you can observe real fairness in nature.
Sure.
Nature said, to you, I will give you all the I would like more power. I mean, I think a beautiful woman who is like 19, 20 still has more power than a wealthy guy who's in his 30s. It's unbelievable power, but
Right.
it's finite, and if you use it incorrectly, you ruin yourself.
Correct.
Right?
Forever.
Forever. And on the other hand, God said, to you, I give nothing, but you can build.
Mm,
Like if a girl's got a shitty face, ain't really nothing you can do. There's makeup and well, makeup's getting better, but a guy can really become, and it takes time, but it's a slow burn. It's really balanced and fair.
yeah.
And you can always tell. Some guys get if I tell you, look, man, all right, this is going to take 2 years, and then at the end of that 2 years, if you do this work, because that 2 years is enough time to put on like 20, 25 pounds of muscle. It's enough time to learn a skill to the point where you're making 60 to 70,000 a year. It's enough time to read enough to and expose yourself
Right.
enough to stuff to where you're an interesting person that can talk. You develop a style like 2 years, right?
Right.
But they want it quick. They want an instant, so they stay angry. And what happened to me, one of the best things that happened to me, uh, is I realized that I was my own problem. And I couldn't blame anything else. I blamed it on me. And even once I took the red pill and I looked at why certain things were turning out the way they turned out, I still never blamed women. I just went, okay, I don't understand. Let me understand what I got to do.
Mm,
But that was always my attitude. So you can't get angry when your attitude is to, or you can't stay angry for long now. When your attitude is, let me get better and take advantage of what I see and what I can do. So I got out there and I did what I needed to do. I mean, look, I just couldn't, I could not accept that it was supposed to be. Uh, one, I couldn't accept not succeeding, and two, I couldn't be angry, man. I couldn't stand that phase because I said, all right, man, there's somebody out there for me, And look, let's pretend I hadn't met Anna. Maybe I'd be in another country. I don't know,
mm,
but the thing is, like, you have to. It's practicality. I practically looked at the situation and said, okay, um, I can't really seriously date if I'm not interesting, if I'm not in shape, if I don't have some kind of money or income. Granted, I think one of the best things to happen to me, again, God protects babies and fools, they say. One of the best things to happen to me, man. I did not have serious financial means until we were together 4 or 5 years. See, but pretty much what she did is she looked at a stock and said this stock will probably rise. Like everything is in place for this stock to rise as long as the stock doesn't fuck itself up pretty much, right? and so because dude, like one of the things I take seriously, because you start to develop, um, we'll call it a nuanced appreciation. Like one of the things I take seriously, if a girl, well, even if she gave me uh her most, I didn't meet her when she was like 27. Most of her youth. What do? Like, go like, all right, you gotta go. Like, no, that's the trade off. And she'll always be 27 to me. It doesn't matter, right? Because that's when I met her, and she fell in love with me, and I fell in love with her. And I know though she's with me because she likes me,
Mm.
me because and I was cool and I'm still cool, because now I'm not just a fighter. Now I'm like kind of famous and I write stuff and I'm always doing cool things, but always pushing myself because I understand that. I'm not gonna get mad at the masculine burden. Like, why would I get mad at something that forces me to be better? Like if I was gonna sit around and get fat and come home and watch, I tell her all the time, look, you are a lot of guys. They come home and they're watching football. I'm like, let's go. Now I still watch football, especially, but like, if it's between like football and like tickets to go see a show, man, I'm gonna go see the show, man. I'll watch the
Right.
game later. Like, it's not. But I'm always, pushing myself to become better, pushing myself to become more, be interesting, and I do it for me. It just so happens that doing that stuff for me works to keep my relationship strong and solid. So I have a very different perspective on these things. Now I've seen the worst of it. Let's not like, I don't want to paint the picture that I've gotten lucky, and I don't think I've ever painted that picture. Um, but I think you have to be committed to to trying to, and I want peace. Like I'm always gonna. I'll never take a poor situation to be peaceful, but at the same time, I recognize that sometimes to attain peace, you got to put yourself through a lot of some hardship.
Mm.
Like financially speaking, man. Like I am by no one's definition rich. Uh, but I don't think about or worry about money because the way I have my operation set up, it comes in, or I earn it, whatever. I live. I was actually doing something with a financial advisor today, and I realized how far below my means I live. Now, I'm not living like a bum, but I'm not trying to be crazy and flash out. And I bring that up to say I'm seeking a peaceful situation in my life.
Right. Right. Right.
I understand what do I need for a peaceful situation. I need a good solid girl with me, and I found one. I tell her all the time, one way or the other, she's my last relationship. So like, let's hope it's for the one way and not the other is the idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I need to be healthy, so I make sure I get in the gym, work out, eat well, and I have to make sure I have enough money to where I'm not like worrying about money because that's a really bad situation when worried about money, being stressed, making decisions, basic living decisions based on money. It's
Right.
one thing. It's one thing to decide how you're gonna fly to your vacation. It's a total other thing when like little class because she's very money conscious, which is good because it balances me out. I'm like, okay, I know I have to eat. Let's just go buy groceries. Like I don't think about how much the groceries are gonna cost.
Yeah.
I just know I
Yeah.
gotta eat. Right? But that's the whole point. That all comes back to say it's about trying to be peaceful and trying to be better. I think I think when you don't want to be angry, it's very hard to be angry.
Yeah. Right.
Uh, and whatever that looks like is whatever it looks like. And for me, that looks like the life I built.
Two things. Do you think that the negative emotions can be a form of addiction, like the rumination and the putting yourself in a situation where uh, you're in that sort of cycle?
Yeah, I absolutely, man. Because negative emotions about about an injustice you received
Right.
or you feel like you were the victim of, that um that confirms your view of the world.
Mm.
Not only does it confirm your view of the world, but it excuses a lot of your inadequacy it's easy for me to go, I'm not, doing XYZ because this person hurt me or that thing went bad. When the reality is doing that will probably make sure you never get hurt again, or it'll put you in a better position in your life. But when you're shirking responsibility, and indulging in your negative emotions, then all it's just reliving something terrible so you can feel something. And
Mm,
really, I don't even think people want to feel. I don't think people want to feel good or bad. A lot of times they want to feel something, and if they don't know how, or no, I guess they would prefer to feel good. But if they don't know how to do that, they'll settle for feeling bad.
right.
They will, you know, and and the best way to do that, man, is think about all the ways the world owes you, and take your mind off all the things you can do about it. Because when you're thinking about what to do about something, it's real hard to think about how angry it makes you. That's not to say you won't be mad, but now you're focusing on solutions. Okay. And like real constructive solutions that put you at the locus of control. You know, like if you get dumped by a crazy skeezer, right? Uh a solution that does not put you at the center of control is I'm never going to trust women again,
Mm,
right? And they're all like that and avoid them. A solution that does put you at the center of control is uh, I'm going to screen better, right? That kind of thing. Or I look at where I went wrong in terms of boundaries, and I'm going to enforce those. That kind of deal. So that's hard. Even that's harder. It really comes down to the fact that people, for the most part, are going to take the most energy efficient path to their goals, which is just a fancy way of saying the easiest way. But I don't like saying the easiest way because at the end of the day, it is always the hard way when you do it that way. Energy efficient is, you are putting forth the least amount of energy to move towards something, but it turns out you need to do a little more than that most times.
so, why do you think it's so difficult for men to push past even though they know, like you're saying, because you said, why not do something that's going to make you better? Why is it so difficult for so many men? It seems because there are a lot of dissatisfied men. There's a lot of men that are just suffering, in silence all over the country. Evidence. I mean, just look around, at the state of people today. Why is it so difficult for them to move back past that third phase, that anger phase, and sort of just give up in many ways?
Uh, you're looking at something that humans don't like to do in general, men or women. It's a combination of two things. One, you have to embrace risk, and people. There are two kinds of risk: speculative and pure. Speculative risk, speculation, is basically gambling. You can win or lose something. Well, it's not gambling. It's just that there's a possibility for gain as well as loss. And that's what every attempt at a relationship is. It is a speculative risk.
Mm,
But you start to see it as a pure risk, which is you can only lose. Like, ain't no upside to the plane crashing, right? That's pure risk. Okay. Uh, I think when you've been hurt, when you're mad or whatever, it's real hard to distinguish between the two because all you see is the possibility of loss as uh negativity bias. All right, that's one. The second reason why this is hard combined with this is I'm asking you to do work, man. Like like just do work. It's really amazing. Guys don't, human nature is vicious, man, and we were spoiled for a long time because we had a system in place that for the most part removed certain highs and removed certain lows from we'll call it a sexual marketplace, right? Uh, very few men had harems, but almost no man, if he really wanted to be, was not in a relationship, right?
mhm.
Most of us ended up in the middle with a wife, and some kids, and even if she gained some weight, you had a wife, right? Well, what's happened now, man? The world has changed. We've really we've removed all those buffers, um, but like if I talk to some guys about this, where they say they have trouble finding girls, and I'm like, well, first, where are you looking? And I hear that they haven't even traveled out the city, let alone the state. I go, okay, well, there's probably money. He goes, well, I can't do a long distance. Like, why? You just travel to see her. Oh, that's right. You don't have the money to do this. So if you can't even hop on a plane to another city, do you really have even business dating? You need to go focus on other parts of you. And I get it because I've been here. What this all comes down to is that's the strongest drive in the world. That is created, the need to get laid is created so much in this world, if not everything in this world. So
Mm,
what we're asking the guy to do is something wholly unnatural, but it has to be done, which is focus and build yourself up and then worry about it if it's that, like, and also take an accurate self-assessment. And guys, to their credit, are a lot better at this. Very rarely do you hear a guy be like, yo, I'm fat, but he thinks he's in shape. You hear this all the time with girls, not so much guys, right? But if he was to go, okay, I've got to take this risk, and I'm also going to work and make sure that I have all the tools in place, the ones you can measure,
mm,
health and income, the ones you can't, conversational ability, and we'll call it empathy. Uh, Work to get all those tools in place, and that's a hard journey, man. It takes a long time.
right.
Uh, and it gets even more frustrating when you see other guys who perhaps are lacking in money or compassion or being interesting, but they happen to be 6'3", and the Chads and Tyrones or Enriquez or whatever your
Enrique.
oh man,
That's a
yeah.
new one. I heard that. Thank you. Thanks for representing, man. I appreciate
But like you see those guys succeed, you're like, oh man, shucks. But then when in reality, man, look, that's the card he got. He happened to draw the good card. You're gonna have to work a little bit for it.
it. Right.
That's and guys don't people don't want to hear that either. So I think that, and you actually see this in girls too, is that this particular issue is not combined. The difference is that girls come out off the jump with the thing that the other half of the population wants, and they don't have to take risk at all. They don't have to do it, but if they have to, you ever try and you ever talk to? I just happen to talk to. Forget the podcast where people talk about their experiences. I've had them because the unique background and makeup of my social media. Um, go talk to some woman who's 35 and try to get her to understand, or 35 or 40 with a kid, and try to get her to understand it's kind of over unless you do something. There's one chick I talked to. Uh, I'm like, you understand that gaining weight is like not going to help your cause. Like you fully understand this, and she can't get it, and she thinks because she was pretty, guys. And these low level scrubs are always interesting. She's like, I can't find any good men, and I'm like, well, you got like $3, and a good man costs $7. Like you're gonna have to increase what you're working with, and they don't want to hear that message either.
Right.
Because so like we're dealing with a fundamental human trait, which when you look at it, you realize, oh, most people don't have this trait. That's why most people, for example, are overweight, obese, or overweight. So
Yeah, and that's one of those things, and it's you're seeing it in our society, sort of where people are they want to equalize things and make everything sort of equitable and whatever, and it's just so much of it comes down to the individual deciding I need to make a change. This isn't working for me anymore, and doing something about it. And if they don't want to do that, then it's easy to point the finger at someone else and say, "Oh, well, it's not fair because X, Y, and Z." But it's just ultimately, it's like you said, that's what it
yeah,
is, and nobody can decide it for you. You got to do it for yourself. And speaking of that, because we got a few minutes here, is you've been now 8 years sober, right?
Yeah, 8 years up, man. Very, very happy about it because life is good, man. Sometimes I think about what I call the dark days because like they actually feel dark,
Right.
uh, and it's all good now though.
What because I've run into some of those difficulties in the past, right? So I'm always curious to know what was it for you that you decided like, okay, this in respect to drinking, like, okay, this is something that's going to help me in this situation. Like, what brought you to drink, and then what brought you out of it to get help and to get sober?
As far as what brought me to drink, man, I think I didn't have. I don't think I had a lot of tools that made me interesting. I didn't feel like an interesting, cool person. I didn't
Right.
feel valuable. Even to this day, I have trouble like throwing anything that even remotely looks like a get together. Fortunately, the woman's much better at this than me,
Yeah.
uh, because I don't feel like people gonna show up, man. Like even these are my good friends who have known me forever. So I'm like, okay, how am I going to make myself amenable to the group? Like, and I was like, oh, okay, alcohol, everyone's drinking. Well, there comes a point where that behavior is not, it doesn't have the same benefit as it had once. But by that point, you've developed a real dependency on it. You know, I didn't know how to feel good. Like when I was living in LA, when I moved out there, or rather shipped, for everything on boxing. And it was so quick. I was really lonely, so I tried to drink myself to feel good. And I was like, okay, that's crazy. And then I started drinking, falling asleep with a beer on my chest. Go to bed every night with a drink. Time in my practices around getting alcohol because to me, alcohol kept me from being lonely, and I felt like I
Mm.
was lonely. It made me fit in better. It put me around a crowd. I didn't work to discover anything else about myself, or I didn't value it. And so it became so drinking just became it was easy to fill in an identity. I always say like once you take away alcohol, you find out real fast most people actually are boring as shit. They don't have any personality. Everything is about meeting up for drinks at a happy hour or
Right.
something to that effect. There's
Drinking
no
stories, whatever.
yeah, there's no personality there. And I didn't want to be that guy. Now, part of the reason why I realized I don't want to be that guy is because that starts to take a toll. You start behaving recklessly, getting lucky. You keep getting lucky. You can only get lucky for so long.
Right.
As I like to say, you can only outrun the law of large numbers for so long before it catches up to you. And the law of large numbers is this thing in probability that says the more trials you have, the more the results tend to look like what the theory projects. Like if I flip a coin 10 times and it comes back, seven heads, three tails, you're not gonna go, oh, that coin must be rigged. I mean, you might, but it's probably not. That's a reasonable outcome. You expect that. Now, if I flip it 100 times, it might be like 53-47. I flip it 1,000 times, and so on. It's going to get closer and closer to 50-50. That's the law of large numbers. The bigger it gets, the closer you get to theory. So, if I keep doing dumb shit, eventually, uh, coins are going to land on heads, and I bet on tails, and I'll be in jail or something crazy. And really, the breaking point for me when I came back. It was like my second night back from AIT when I came back from the army and all that stuff. I went out drinking, then I didn't remember, how I got to my buddy's house, and I was like, "Oh, this is no good. I'm gonna go to an AA meeting." Came out, was like, "All right," and we stayed committed after that. Man, December 23rd, I haven't had a drink since December 22nd.
And how quickly did your life turn around after you stopped drinking?
Slow, real slow, because you got to remember, um, in my mind, it was instant in terms of like alcohol is no longer an issue or an option. But a few things have to happen in the real world. First, the people have to think you're serious.
Mm.
It's not. That's why if I when someone says, "All right, I'm done drinking," they say it the day after a hangover. You don't take them seriously. You take them a little more seriously after a month. 1 year not drinking, now they're for real. Now it's like, okay. So there's that. Two, one of the things that happened to me is because I was unbelievably busy during this time period of my life. I was working, I was training, I was drilling for the army, I was going to school. I didn't have time, right? It wasn't until probably around year two and a half that I was able to sit back and start really looking and reflecting on things. And I was like, wow, man, I had a lot of issues. Messed over, fucked over a lot of people. Let me start making amends and all that. I didn't even release sober letters to my drunken self until year five of my sobriety anniversaries. That's just released on December 23rd, um, 2018. That's my 5 year anniversary. I wanted to do it then, but that that made a big difference to me. Is looking at how I was affecting the people in my life, and I was like, I don't want to be that burden. Um, the other thing that happens, the reason why why the change isn't instantaneous, you ain't gotta heal, man. Physically, yeah, I put my body through the ringer with alcohol, man. That
Right.
shit is like awful. And then, now, when you look at my blood work now, I got, I am in, I'm as healthy as not as healthy, but I'm but by all metrics that you can measure one's health comparatively to, in the 95th percentile, body fat, muscle, and heart rate, all that good stuff, right? But
Mm.
and I know part of it is because, look, I can't take myself seriously as a healthy individual, take my health seriously, and be out there drinking. And then on top of that, man, like, I understand. You also get to see, like, how much of your issue is related to emotional trauma,
Right.
how much of it is just relationship with consumption, and I had a little bit of both. Um, so the change wasn't instant. Like rather, the change in my life wasn't instant. Other than there was no longer the option to drink. The only change that was apparent immediately is that there was no longer the option to drink. But after year one, year two, year three, like it starts taking a toll. Interesting thing happens around year two, though, when people see you're really serious, that this is not just a ploy. Now people have to reconcile. They have to make sense of you. And if the relationship is built on you being a mess up, then they got to figure out how they're going to relate to you afterwards. Because it's real
Mm.
easy to justify, if they like hanging out with you and your life is kind of a mess, and that's like kind of the point, or one of the running themes of your life, of your conversation, and all of a sudden you're like together, you're not drunk, you got a little bit of money, and of course that's going to change your attitude and approach to how you treat yourself and what you tolerate from other people. I lost more friends around between the 2 to 3 year mark than I did when I was drinking, when it had perfectly, fine, or right after when I got sober, and I thought that was really interesting.
What do you think that is? Because it's weird. It's like I don't know. It might have been one of your tweets or one of the because I'm in many of the tweets in my feed are like very similar in terms of positive. Like the guys are really positive. They're making money. They're doing a thing. Like I try to stay away from the political poisonous stuff. But there's a thing where it's like your friends are like when you're saying I'm going to make a positive change, they're like, yeah, go ahead, and then until you actually do it,
Yep.
and then that's when the hate starts, and it's this really weird thing because maybe there's a part of them that doesn't actually believe you can do it, but when they see that you're actually serious, it's weird. So tell me your perspective as to why something like that would happen.
Status is a funny thing, man. Humans, I think, we organize ourselves by status. We make a lot of friendships. When we make a friendship with somebody, there is a status hierarchy that we are respecting when we do that. Whether we buy in, and you get a choice to make. Do you buy into the difference, or do you stay away, or how do you go? When you're close with somebody for a little while, or you're not even you don't have to be that close, but your relationship is based on a certain level of status
Hmm.
that you have relative to them. Usually, when you do, well, not usually, if you go through on your plans, you now interrupt the status hierarchy significantly in many cases. And if they can't handle that, it's going to be a big deal.
Right.
The relationship is not going to be able to sustain itself because you're not the same in many ways. You're not the same people that became friends, you know. And you got to remember, a lot of people are in relationships with people, with other people, because that person is non-threatening or they're
Yeah.
confirming. When you know,
Right.
if you become friends with somebody and they're like making minimum wage, taking up money, going out to drink, they're a mess all the time, right? You might hate that they do that, but it's not. But there's a certain thing you get out of that relationship and that status differential. They clean themselves up and they get on your level, but you still talking to them like they're the other person. That's gonna be a problem,
Yeah.
you know. And so I think every time you level up, barring your real good friends, um, are people who are friends with you for reasons not dependent on that. And I think those friendships are rare, and I certainly treasure those as well.
Hmm.
Uh, you have to usually shed. That's just part of the game, and it ain't negative or positive. I don't think people realize what's going on when this happens. Having been on the receiving end of it, uh, multiple times from multiple people, all in the same concentrated time cluster, uh, I understood it. I think better than most because one thing I can say is this: if anything, I am better behaved uh, than I was. So if you've been cool with me all this time, and I stay committed to this thing, and then like all of a sudden everyone like right on the same click is like finding different things that aren't really related were an issue and now they are, then I'm like, all right, it ain't it's not me, or it's not me in the sense that I'm doing something new.
Hmm.
It's it's something new coming from somebody you can't look at the same way. Now you got to go, okay, you're saying this, and I can't just dismiss you for having this opinion because you're a drunk or something, right? Now it's like, well, you are cognizant and think this way, and you're on my level now. Ooh, and now it's different. So I think that's why that happens.
Hmm. Um, and and while we wrap up here, there's one more thing that I wanted to touch on. You wrote a book, which I think it's new because I didn't see anything about it, but I could be wrong. About something that I think is probably the most soul sucking, damaging thing to men right now, which is pornography addiction.
Yeah.
Um,
It wasn't a book, but it was a god and a course. So I guess
right.
technically a book. We live in this weird era where everything is a book, but it's not.
Yeah. 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 Talk to us about that. What's it called? What inspired it? And yeah, just talk to us about the guy.
So the god is called the Dick Detox. The god to beating porn, and it's a walkthrough of what you got to do to stop dealing with or to stop struggling with internet porn addiction. And here's the crazy thing, man. Like we're like true blooded millennials
Mm,
in that, like your birthday is 85 or
85.
80.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
85.
I'm 85 as well, right? So we're like true blooded millennials. That means that we didn't have social media in high school,
Yeah.
right? We didn't have social media in high school. High speed internet, but what's considered high speed internet is like childishly slow. Like they don't have it anymore. Like I remember in high school, all the cool kids with a little bit of money, they had DSL at their house. Everyone had dial up. You couldn't even. It would take you like a month to download a movie on a DSL connection today, right? And that's not that long ago.
Right, right.
No bigger winner of this technological revolution was the pornography industry,
Right.
man. Because before, like first you had to get tapes. You know, remember when Girls Gone Wild was delivering DVDs, right?
Yeah, man.
Right?
Hell yeah, man.
Like that's how it was then. And then like if you was real gangster about it, you could like if you had the space and the time and the resources, you could download shit off LimeWire. All right. And that would still take a while because these are whole movie files moving over like a DSL connection, right?
Right.
Then the streaming revolution and true high speed, like the stuff we got today, came, and it was like nothing. It was like nothing we'd ever seen because it was hard to get addicted to porn back in the day because there was a real risk factor. You had to like a real cost to it, and and that cost you had to have a stash. You had to hold a stash. Motherfuckers would come over and be like, "Oh man, look at this creep," right? And or you had to go buy it or order it, and it always comes and for whatever reason on big ass oversized boxes, with bright colors. So there was like a real cost of like hoarding and having pornography.
Right, right.
And then like if you live with anybody, you would be in the VCR, the DVD player. Like it's a big deal. Nowadays though, you just get on a streaming site and press a button.
Right.
You go to the site, and then with Google Incognito mode, whatever, right? You don't even leave it in your search history. And so these guys, it's so easy for them to get this fix. And it's the natural urge. It's probably the most powerful urge on this planet.
Yeah.
So they hijack it. It's not like a drug addiction, like where drug is like manufactured chemicals. Like there's nothing on this planet naturally that's going to affect your serotonin receptors like coke. Like it's just not that's manufactured. There ain't nothing. But porn is just like a chick, man. That's what you designed to do. The difference is it allows you one, you don't have to work on yourself whatsoever to get it.
Right.
That's the big deal one. You ain't got to worry about it rejecting you. You don't have to put up with the personality, so you don't have to develop. And there's this concept called the Coolidge effect, which you basically recharge to variety. So you got all these things together, the variety, the fact that you don't have to the fact that you don't have to interact or develop, and it becomes real easy to fall into this dark hole of just watching chicks on the screen. And there's so much of it. In my article, I
So
did the
much.
research on it. Pornhub boasts that if you had started, well, this was back in 2014, by the way, that if you had started watching porn at the start of the Civil War, all the stuff on their site, and you did nothing but watch porn, not food, not sleep, nothing, you would still have like 9 years of material left by the time you got to 2014.
Oh my
And there's
god.
so much stuff being added all the time. There's so much variety, so much new stuff being added. It's a quick source of money for lazy humans. So there's always going to be another girl, another thing. They're never going to make it illegal because that would create even worse situations. So it's up to guys to navigate and figure that out.
Wow. And where can they get that guide? Because
Uh,
no, go ahead.
I was gonna say right on my website, free download.
Because I read it, man, and it was like I had always understood like it was an issue, obviously, for just a lot of guys. But the stuff that you broke down, especially about the it wasn't the dopamine, it was what's the love, the oxytocin.
Yep.
And I guess you were talk about the difference between what porn gives you and what an actual woman gives you, the difference between the two, and why it's such an issue.
So this is funny, man, because like if it depends on who you ask and what the research shows, but the thing, okay, so from like a biochemical perspective, there's not really any difference. Like if we somehow like blanked out everything and just looked at your neurotransmitters, not really a difference between like if you come with a girl or you orgasm with a some porn. The problem arises in everything else that leads up to it.
Mm,
Uh, the one like the ease of access, the variety. No one except the most balling dudes would ever be able to replicate that level of variety and ease of access. It wouldn't happen, right? That's unnatural, but it plays on a natural circuit in your brain. So with it, well, and that's one thing. The other thing it takes away from you is, generally speaking, though not always, uh, but generally speaking, to get laid, you have to bond with the person uh, or impress the person. Either way, like there's an investment of you that tends to pull you upward in one way or the other, whether that be physically, emotionally, or mentally. Here you get, well, okay, nothing's for free, but you don't get the benefit anymore. Now it's only a negative, only a tax. Like imagine, like we were saying earlier, moving from the anger phase to, like, the next phase of reconciliation. If to get to that, you got to put some work in, right? It's a
mm,
lot easier to just go, just watch some porn instead. No work on yourself at all.
right.
And like that's a real, like people talk about sex transmutation. I put sex transmutation in that category of things that I can't prove how it works, but there seems to be something there beyond anecdote, and I'm not going to rely on it. Well, I don't have to, but like I'm not going to rely on it to make decisions in my life. I put it in that category, much like I put, like, maybe like astrology or the fate stuff I was talking about, like how I met my girl. That's a big deal though, because if I'm wrong, right, or rather if we're wrong about sex transmutation, and it's nothing, that's just something that's made up, uh, then the best case scenario is now we just have this thing that is just purely addictive and does not force you to do anything that you would normally have to do to get the real thing. That's why I tell people all the time about drugs. Drugs are just a shortcut to happiness. Like if you have and a certain kind of happiness, because we know that relationships make it a lot harder for you to get addicted to anything. They have rats coke, but as long as the rats were social, they didn't get hooked on coke. When they were lonely, which is kind of how you use pornography, like very, very rarely. I'm not saying these guys don't exist. I'm just saying I don't know them. I've never met them. uh, you don't ever meet a bunch of guys. Go, what you doing later, man? I'm watching porn. You want to come over? Yeah, let's go have a jerk session. Like that's not how it rolls. It's not
No.
like smoking a joint or drinking. It's not like smoking weed or drinking. It's
Yeah,
a different kind of consumption.
not generally.
There's no social element to it. So that's the other thing. There's no social, and so it makes it even easier to get hooked on this space, man. And you start to prefer, because we're humans, we start to prefer the path of least resistance.
Right.
So before you know it, you go talk to this girl, and she don't look like the girl in the movies. Plus, she don't like you anyway. She's like, I'm gonna go watch porno, man. Like that's your response. Now, and look, and I will even say that at one point this wasn't a big deal. Now, because it's so easy to get. You know what high speed internet porn is like? High speed internet porn is like when motherfuckers figured out that they could break down a brick in the crack. Like that's pretty much what it is.
Yeah.
And they were like, "Whoa, hold up! You're telling me I can get them higher for with less and make more money? Why would I ever sell coke again?" You know. But the whole point of coke, it was a substitution for good feelings that you get, like, just being a cool motherfucker. So that analogy, really, I'm gonna tweet that later, man. That's brilliant. I never made that connection, but like, yeah, that's pretty much what it is, man.
Yeah. Oh man, that was great, Ed. Well, listen, man, our time is up here. Thank you for your time and your words, and I think people are going to get a lot of value out of this. Let these people know where they can find you.
You see that website? So our site, yeah, edlattimore.com. And if you want to talk to me on social media, you can connect with me on Ed Lattimore. Is my Twitter, it's my Instagram, it's my Facebook. I'm Ed Lattimore everywhere, man. That's how you can find me. I make it real simple.
Great. And I suggest the guys, even if you're moderately on the fence in terms of like your porn use or whatever, I suggest you get his book. It might open your eyes up, and it might expose you to certain things because there's a bit of a test or something in there. At least that's what I gathered from it, and it was very valuable. So, Ed, thanks again. Congratulations on your sobriety. Happy belated birthday again, and we'll talk soon, man.
Hey, thanks again, man. You have a good evening.
All right, have a good night. Peace.